Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial on how to get started with the .NET MAUI DataGrid control. Using Syncfusion.Maui DataGrid control, you can display data in a tabular format. In this video, I'll show you how easy it is to add the Syncfusion DataGrid control to your .NET MAUI application and bind data to it. I'll also show you how to customize the grid by defining columns, enabling sorting, and enabling selection, among other things. Before you begin, make sure you have installed the latest version of Visual Studio 2022 with the required .NET MAUI workload. You should also have one of the .NET SDKs installed on your machine. Once you have installed the necessary tools, launch Visual Studio 2022 and choose Create a New Project from the dashboard. In the New Project dialog, select .NET MAUI Application from the list of templates and click the Next button. Then, I give a project name and location. Here, I have chosen the .NET 6.0 framework. Click Create to create the project. Now the project is ready, it's time to add the data grid control. Before running the application, I choose the Android emulator from the given options. And then choose the Pixel 5 Android emulator to show the output. Now, let's look at the default output of the application. The application has to compile the default code, so let's wait for a few seconds. And now, the application's homepage is displayed. Next, I will demonstrate how to incorporate a Syncfusion.NET MAUI DataGrid into the application. I open the NuGet package manager. Search for the Syncfusion.Maui DataGrid package and install it in my application. It will take a few seconds to complete the installation, so let's wait. To proceed with the changes listed in the dialog, click OK. Next, I import the Syncfusion.Maui DataGrid namespace. And to the local XML namespace, I map the default project namespace, Maui project. To initialize the DataGrid control, I add the content property. And then I add the SF DataGrid control. Next, I need to register the Syncfusion core handler to map the cross-platform API to the native Vue API. I open the Maui program CS page and add Syncfusion Maui core hosting. Then register the handler by adding the configure Syncfusion core method. To use the Syncfusion Maui components, it's necessary to register a trial license key. I can do this by opening the app.xaml C# file, add the register license method, and enter the trial license key. To find out where to generate the trial license key, refer to the description below. Next, I'll show you how to bind the data source for the grid. I'm going to use the MVVM pattern to create a collection of objects. First, I create a new model class and name it Order Info. I add the field Order ID of type string. In the same way, I define the other fields Customer ID, Customer, Ship City, and Ship Country with appropriate types. Then I add the constructor for the Order Info class, and then assign the arguments to the appropriate properties. Next, I need to create a Vue model class to assign the values for these fields. I add a new class and name it Order Info Repository. Now the class is created, and I change it to public. I declare a private variable, orders, for the bindable property that I'm going to add now. I declare a bindable property, orders. Then I create a public method, generate orders, and initialize the order info collection with the required number of data objects. Then I define the constructor where I create an instance for bindable property and call the generate orders method. To bind this data object, I open the XAML page and add the binding context property and assign the local order info repository. To bind this order info collection, I assign it to the item source property in the SF data grid. Then press the F5 key to run this application. See here, the grid is rendered with the provided data. Once the data is bound to the grid, you can customize it by defining the columns, enabling sorting, and enabling selection. First, I will show you how to customize and display specific columns in the data grid. By default, the data grid control will automatically create columns for all the properties in the data source. However, you can disable this behavior by adding the auto-generate columns mode property and setting its value to none. This will prevent the grid from generating columns automatically, and you can then define your columns using the columns property of the data grid control. To define columns, I can add a data grid text column or any other supported column type that you want to use to the columns property of the data grid control. Here, I use the data grid text column. Each column type has its own set of properties that you can use to customize it. For example, the data grid text column has properties like mapping name, header text, and text alignment. Now, I will show you two basic options. Here I add the mapping name property to map the appropriate field from the order info class to display the column. I map the order ID field. Next, add the header text property and set its value to order ID. The field value assigned to this header text property will be displayed as the column header text. In the same way, I define the other column fields. Check now, you should be able to see the changes that I have made to the columns, such as changing the column header text and the data source property that is displayed in the column. Apart from these, you can customize the columns by setting additional properties, such as the width of the column or the text formatting for the cells in the column. You can explore the documentation to know the available options for each column type to see what customization options are available. By default, only horizontal grid line is visible in the data grid. I can also customize the appearance of the Syncfusion.Maui DataGrid control by showing vertical grid lines. To do that, I add the grid lines visibility property and set its value to both. This will show both horizontal and vertical grid lines in the grid. I also add the header grid lines visibility property to show or hide vertical grid lines in the header row of the grid. Here, I set its value to both. Now, check that the vertical line is visible in the grid. Next, let's see how to enable some of the important features of the data grid. I'll start with the sorting feature. To sort data in grid, I add the sorting mode property. It has three options: single, multiple, and none. To sort one column at a time, use single. In this example, records can be sorted in ascending or descending order when the name column header is clicked. To sort multiple columns at a time, use multiple. To disable sorting on all the columns, use none. Let's see how to perform selection in the data grid. It can be done by adding the selection mode property. It has four options: multiple, none, single, and single deselect. Here I choose the option multiple. See here, I can select multiple rows. Finally, I will show you how to add custom height and width to the data grid. I include the height request property and set its value to 290 pixels. Then add the width request property and set its value to 300 pixels. See, data grid rendered with custom height and width. Now let me quickly summarize what we have seen so far. I have shown you how to create a .NET MAUI application and add Syncfusion.Maui.DataGrid control to it. I showed you how to bind data and enable a few of its important features. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this video useful, give it a like and subscribe to our channel.